the ultimate deck podcast. Need a show about outdoor living? This is where it's at with your hosts, Shane Chapman and Way Laurent. Thank you for tuning in. Now let the show begin. Yeah, the ultimate deck podcast. Let's go.
Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. It's Wade and Shane with the Ultimate Deck Podcast. Fresh back from our trip to IBS, fresh into fresh powder on the eve of our TUDS events coming up this week. How are you, Wade?
What a fresh intro that was.
Right? I've been working on that. I've had 2 or 3 weeks to prepare for it.
Yeah.
We had a little
Just
lapse
pulled
there.
it from your own old name.
Yeah, that's right. So last week we spent down at IBS, which was good. Not last week. We intentionally made that a real short trip, actually. It was a 48-hour banger.
I was like, that was this week.
Which is how I think I might want to do that more. Yeah, it was just a few days ago, I guess. So we talked about this a lot while we were down there. It's been Vegas for like years, like since COVID essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That both of the shows that we tend to go to, Deck Expo and IBS, have just been in Vegas for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we end up there twice a year, and like they're always within 2-3 months of each other. So we're kind of Vegas out a little bit. And so we thought this time, like every time we've gone before, like every time we go, it's like, we go in on a Sunday and we plan to leave on a Friday. And every time by about like Tuesday or Wednesday, we're like, I wish we were flying home now.
This is enough. We've had enough.
So this time we're like, why don't we just get in and get out and just do the show and not worry about all the...
I think it went so well.
Around. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I think it was great. That was the way to do it.
Yeah, so no issues with that whatsoever. And what made it easier, we were concerned a little bit, because IBS is a monster. For anybody that hasn't been before, the International Builder Show is a gigantic show relative to other shows like Deck Expo. It's tiny, right?
Yeah.
And so the concern was like, it's a 3-day show. And if you want to have a look around and you're like in like a general renovation type thing, like you do all sorts of things, then, or you're a home builder, oh man, you could spend all 3 days there and still not see everything you wanted to see.
The halls are just so big.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're packed.
Yes.
And there's so much to see.
Well, the event draws something like 120,000 visitors.
It's wild.
It's big. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so we thought like, boy, we better not stop and talk very much then.
We'll make
we're
a game
some ground
plan.
to cover.
Let's look at the map.
Yeah.
Make a plan.
Because there's what, 3 or 4 halls at the Las Vegas Convention Center, and one's like got 2 floors to it, and
North, south, west, central.
there's no east, right?
No,
I don't think
no
there's
east
hall. Oh, but there's a central, and then west has 2 floors or something.
South,
So,
I think it's 2 floors.
yeah, whichever one. So there's like 4 or 5 buildings worth of stuff you need to see. And so it can be a little hectic running around from spot to spot trying to see all the things you want to see. But this year, thankfully, as like the day we were flying in, we noticed that they actually had started to categorize and organize it by, what would you call it? By trade almost, kind of in a way?
Or by like use,
Sure.
right? It was like,
So they had like kitchen and bath has always had its own thing. KBIS has been like, it's in the show, but they've always had the kitchen and bath stuff in its own like hall or whatever.
yeah.
And that was still the case. They had 2 halls, but this time they put outdoor living in its own spot as well, and then building materials in its own spot. And I don't know if there's other categories, but the moral of the story is instead of having to bounce around and be like, oh, there's a railing guy over in hall A and there's a decking guy over in hall C and there's this, they were all for the most part in half of one of the halls, which made it super convenient for us.
Yeah.
And efficient.
It was definitely more efficient this time being able to get around.
Right. So we appreciated because we were only there. We had about a day and a half to do it all. And this made it very possible. So in the old format, it would have been tight.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
We would have had to talk to no one.
Yeah. And that was the plan.
Doesn't work
And then
for us.
We
talk
it's
too
impossible.
Much. Yeah.
Like people see you, you see people, and it's just like, hey.
Yeah.
Haven't seen you for 12 weeks.
Well, yeah.
And then chat. Western Lumber says on the Instagram here, because we're live there, recording on God's Day. Yeah. Suppose so.
We had to.
Gotta do what you gotta
We
do.
got too much stuff going on this week.
Right.
You know?
And so here's the thing. We have this event coming up called TUDS X, Contractor Expo. It's going to be great. We have it happening at both of our locations, Regina on Tuesday, Saskatoon on Thursday.
Yep.
It's a big deal. We got a lot of contractors coming to it. It's a big deal. A lot of vendors coming to it, and a lot of vendors coming from a variety of places, from the States, from Toronto, from Calgary. Like most of the vendors are flying in.
Yes.
We got presenters that are, for the most part, local, but there is some travel between Regina and Saskatoon that has to happen. So anyways, we're down in the States and people are like, oh, like, has your season been going all year? Like, I heard it's pretty good. The weather's been pretty good. It's like, yeah, the weather's been fantastic. It's been...
Did you guys build all winter?
Unseasonably warm. Yeah. Not warm, but like, not like you think of in February.
It's not awful.
Lots of like plus days, which means the little bit of snow that we have had has generally melted away at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like abnormal. It's like, we're all like, holy crap, this season's going to kick off early, like in March. We get back from IBS on
Sin
Thursday
City.
night, late Thursday, midnight on Thursday. And now it's Sunday, and we are in the middle of a blizzard. This is more snow than we've gotten all year. And the temperatures have dropped. It was like nice. And it's supposed to be nice next week, too. But just the week of Tides X, it's like -20 and a foot of snow in one day.
Like, yeah, a touch over a foot of snow is what we're getting.
So we're getting,
and then
right
it's
now.
supposed to be rank winds tomorrow, which if the winds actually happen, that'll be bad news bears. If we actually get 70K winds with all of this snow, we're in for...
So I've been
We're in for a
keeping
full whiteout.
an eye on the weather and the airlines because we have so many people flying in, and we're like, oh shit! Like, can you imagine if if people don't make it here? Which is a very real possibility because flights basically from like last night to about 4:30 today into Regina and Saskatoon were getting canceled. I would say probably 70% of the flights.
Yep.
100% of them coming from Calgary, which is where a bunch of the vendors are coming from. I'd say half the ones coming from Toronto, which would be where all the US and Toronto guys are coming from.
Yep.
So I was like, oh boy. But anyways, it looks like it's the flights are starting to align. They're not getting canceled anymore. And I believe that this system is supposed to be through us by tomorrow morning when the rest of the people start flying in tomorrow. So anyways, interesting little situation we got ourselves in here. Who do we have here? What comment here? The event not happening in the BC locations. It is happening at all of our locations. Find your closest, the Ultimate Deck Shop location, and there is an event happening there. What's with the Western Lumber Company complaining about God's Day, says Mark Westrom. Right. He was in the wrong IG account. Yeah. You got to be careful about that nowadays. Westrom, keep your opinions personal, you know? Scott says, what's up, fellas? He was down there. We had to chat with Scott a little bit. Always good to see Scott. He's like, for a while, it's like you see him and he's like wasting away. It's like skinnier. Now he's getting like jacked.
Putting some,
he's like,
putting some weight on again.
Settle down. Starting to look like Georges St. Pierre out there.
Right.
So it's good to see him. Northern Outdoor Living's in here. It's good to see him down there as well. He was working. He's kind of like tied himself up with Millboard. He's making a push. We'll talk about that in a second.
The whole attend a show and work the entire show. Is that actually good or not? You know?
First question, did you guys check out that Millboard booth? Pretty sweet. Hey, gents, says Corey from Fortress. Currently Fortress. The guy is working for a new company every time we talk to him, but currently Fortress. Just kidding. Inlight Alex sent me an email the other day. I know I saw it. I just haven't really read all of it, but I was expecting that email. We're going to talk about Inlight a little bit today too. So like Alex will now be glued to the screen. And sup Northerner boys from Northern Outdoor Living. And Corey says that's rude. Harsh reality, right?
You know?
Harsh reality. How many companies that guy worked for since we met him?
4.
4? Well, that's not
3.
That's not awful. Where was he?
3. He's done
McIlveen, then Laird Plastics,
and now
Fortress.
Fortress.
Okay, fine. Just 3.
3. In 7 years. So that's every other year.
Scott now says, do we need to talk, Corey?
I don't know, man. He's at the 2-year itch.
Awkward
Maybe coming up.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Okay. Should we get on with it, or do you have any fun stories you want to tell?
You know what? I think probably the most fun story that I have is that, like, I didn't go out at all at Vegas this time. That's a completely off-brand trip this time.
Yes. Yep.
So and it felt effing amazing.
Well, Wade, when you're ready,
Over
we
on
can
the
do
dark
more of that.
side where you are.
I don't know if we need to go to bed at 6 all the time, but like maybe just a happy medium of not getting blackout drunk and being in like home by midnight. That works.
I felt like I had a whole bunch of sinus pressure when I went down there. Like I was not sick, but like I had sinus congestion the whole time. And man, that just takes the wind right out of your sails.
Tony from Hollywood Decks in here.
Oh yeah, I saw him.
Saw him as
I saw
well.
him a couple times. He's such a beauty. Tony's a sweet dude.
Ghosted me on Fremont. There's conversation. Look at that. Look at how we get this community together.
Yeah.
They just chat amongst themselves with us as the background noise. It's really good.
I actually believe Scott's message there is actually
for you.
Me. Yeah.
Right. So that's what happened. Like we got there the first night on
and
Tuesday.
I didn't ghost him. I messaged him and told him I wasn't going.
Yeah.
So that's not entirely true. I didn't ghost you.
We got there Tuesday at about 6:00. We had a dinner planned with
I ghosted my ex.
Everlast.
No
with
message.
the Everlast team. And we did that at, where were we? Venetian?
Yep.
Canaletto's, I think it was called.
Sure,
an Italian
Canaletto.
place. So we did that with them that night, and then we went for a drink with them to just like some
lounge.
loud-ass lounge.
Yeah.
Till about midnight. So it was a fairly tame night then too, but at least we were out doing things.
Yep.
And then the second night, we only had 2 nights there. Second night, it was like, you spent most of your day at the show trying to rally people up to go to Fremont Street. You're like, tonight, Fremont Street. We're going to Fremont. I just love Fremont. Let's go to Fremont.
I do love Fremont Street. It's so fun.
You probably talked to like no less than 20 or 30 people about going to Fremont that night.
Yeah.
And so it was like, well, that's happening. And so then after the show, we like went for a bite to eat. And then you're like, all right. I was like, what's the plan? Because I didn't think that we were going anywhere.
Well, we were
like going home.
We're done eating at like 6.
Right. It was early. Yeah. And we had our bags and stuff with us. That was the problem. You're like, I think we should go back to the hotel, drop our bags off, have a rest, and then head out. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
If we get back to the rooms, like it's a good chance it's over. No. Just like an hour. Okay, sounds good. I'll go back and edit videos because I knew I had a bunch of that to do and was looking for an opportunity to get that done. So I was like, sure, let's do that. We go back, and so we got back to rooms about 6:45-ish or so, 6:40.
Yeah.
And you're like, meet you down here in an hour. I was like, sounds good. Then in the back of my head, I was like, this is 50-50. Like
at best, it was 50-50.
Like,
at best.
I'm going to go do some work, so I'll be awake. But I was like, but I might not be really willing to go out after like sitting there for an hour. Anyways, I had texted my wife. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, we're just laying in the hotel room. I'm like editing videos. Wade wanted to come back for a quick little rest, whatever. And she's like, oh, like in for the night? I was like, no, I think we're going to go out to Fremont Street. She's like, oh, is that actually happening? I was like, well,
probably not.
Like there's a pretty good chance it doesn't. Like we might just be in for the night. And she's like, yeah, right. And I don't know when you text me. It wasn't until like 8:30. But that time I was like, well, he's passed right out. Like I won't bother texting him. He's like sleeping. But anyway, when I did hear from you, it was like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. You're like,
me too.
Pants have been off for a while. I'm not real motivated to get back and go out. I was like, yep, all good. And that was the end of it. That was the end of it. We never made it to
Man, it was just going to turn into a wild, like it was just going to be late. That's all that was going to happen.
Oh yeah. Like if we would have gone back out, you would have done what Wade does.
2 or 3 in the morning. It would have been way too late.
It would have been a goddamn mess.
Yep. We needed either a dinner invite for Wednesday night so that we were either with people.
Yeah.
That could have kept it going.
Yeah.
Or Fremont earlier.
I'm kind of half choked that I'm done my coffee. I've got non-alcoholic beers in that fridge over there. One of us should make a run for it.
Sure.
But anyways.
Yeah, he's true. Levi's like, I was there. And he really did. But you also shut it down by like 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Scott says he only went out one night as well.
And that was the Tuesday before we got there.
All of our friends and us, we're getting old. Or everybody's just Vegased out.
Everybody's Vegased out, man.
Like if you'd never been to Fremont before, or if we hadn't been there in years, it would have been like, no, like I'm tired, but like I want to go check this out.
Yeah.
But like we were just there a few months ago. And
it's fun. It's a fun place.
I do like Fremont. My wife was like, why Fremont? And I was like, well, like it is fairly fun at Fremont. Like you get to go down there. There's a lot of entertainment. It beats just going to some random casino on the main strip and then like finding some loud lounge or whatever. Like at least down at Fremont, you've got the 3 live stages. You've got all the street performers, which Lord knows what you'll see during that. And then like, so the weirdos there, and then there's just general people watching. And it's fun because it's like bright in the canopy. And if you get a good group down there and there's like 20 of you just walking up and down the strip, it's a good time. Head up to the Pink Box, go get some ice cream, listen to some live music. Yeah, anyway. For anybody who's quit drinking, these are fantastic. Corona Sunbrews. Let it change your life. They are delicious beers. They taste just like the real thing without the hangover. It's fantastic. This episode brought to you by Corona Sunbrews. Okay. So IBS. This episode's going to be about a bit of a review of what we saw down at IBS. Is there, TC Deck says, yep, Vegas out. Vegas out for sure, says Scott. Everybody's waiting to get out of there. And I think it's going to happen because Deck X was in Dallas this year. So we got a little bit of a break. And then IBS is in Vegas one more time, and then it goes to Orlando for a year, and then back to Vegas. So we'll get a bit of a...
For anybody who's not quitting drinking, these are delicious too.
Yeah. Busies. So we'll do a bit of a review. It's only going to be things we're going to talk about that are kind of like, that were a little bit different. Because everybody's like, well, what did you see? Did you see anything new? Not a ton new,
things
but
that
we're going
we
to talk
thought
about,
were relevant.
yeah, new or interesting or has a story associated. Like, we're not just going to be like, you know, so-and-so was there and whatever. So number one, like, let's get right to it. Everybody's wondering about Millboard. Millboard,
It's the hottest board in the whole world.
they've been at the shows. I feel like they were at IBS last year as well,
Yes.
albeit with a smaller booth.
Yep.
And I feel like they were at Deck Expo.
Yes.
And like, they're not new, but they're new to a lot of people that aren't nerds about the industry. Like, they're, I don't know how long they've been around, but decades. Like,
Yeah.
they are the number one brand outside of North America. Like, you go to the UK or Europe and it's like,
Yep.
it's Millboard, not Trex.
And like even in Australia, New Zealand,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
like
Trex
Millboard
dominates North American market, but
Yeah.
outside North America, Millboard is probably, I would have to guess, the big composite deck manufacturer. So how are they different? Like, don't hold me to this. I have not I'm very familiar with them from over the years. I've followed it and been like, interesting. Because you'd see some of the Instagram accounts from like English deck guys or
Yeah.
Australian deck guys using it.
Yep.
And you're like, interesting. It's different than what we have here, right?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how the board is made up, but it's some sort of like minerally based. Is there fiberglass in it too?
It looks like
remember.
there's fiberglass pieces in there.
So
right?
it has a core.
So different than what everybody, like right now in the industry, everybody's doing a fiberglass wrap on stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's like how people are introducing.
Layering a sheet of fiberglass inside
Right.
of it. But there used to be, like, back in the day, they used to have like the old, like, as we've learned, AZAC. Old AZAC used to have fiberglass in
Yeah.
it as well. And like, there's some brands that sprinkle that shit in there.
Yeah.
But anyways, I don't know for sure if it has fiberglass. But regardless, it's like a I don't know how to describe it. It's like a stony core to it. It's like, it's not like wood and plastic. It's like minerally, like foamy concrete kind of core like
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And then it's got a rubberized cap to it. So why is that great? Well, for one, incredible traction because it's not a hard plastic shell. It's a soft rubber shell. So it's got some like pliability and some grip to it.
Like great traction.
Yeah.
Like really good traction. And where this starts to shine is actually in our climate in the wintertime. It starts to show up.
Yeah.
Because even the really good cap product that's here, it's all HDPE caps.
Yeah.
And so once you freeze that or put a skiff of snow on it, it doesn't respond the same as rubber does, right?
Yeah.
And so you could say
Rubber grips things.
Rubber grips things.
Like tires.
Yep.
That's why we don't use hard plastic tires.
That's right.
So that's one cool thing about it.
They're the best.
It is, and I don't know that this has anything to do with the rubber cap, but for some reason, it is probably the most realistic looking composite deck board out there. You could talk about, like, that's a phrase that a lot of manufacturers use, that, and like even we use. It's like when a new board comes out from whoever, from AZEC or from wherever, we're like, oh boy, that's like super realistic looking, and some of them are all the time, but
Yeah.
like this stuff, legit, you probably could be fooled that it's, you know, like some of that vintage line stuff or like Promenade from Fibron, like some of that stuff can fool you against hardwoods that have a very linear grain. Like you're like, hold it up against a piece.
Yeah,
of
that symmetry, like the Fibron symmetry line with
that too. Yeah.
the ones that are like the burnt umber and the cinnabar.
Yeah.
Like from 5 feet away, you'd have a tough time.
So the common ground in that is like, it's easier to replicate and fool somebody when the graining and whatnot is very linear.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start adding in like the knots and the loops,
Yep.
generally maybe because they repeat a lot, but generally that's where they don't look super realistic. You're like, I get it. That's supposed to look like wood, and it does, but it's not realistic, right? This stuff somehow, well, for one, it's molded from actual real wood boards. Those embossing patterns.
American oak is what Levi would say. I think they are molded from American oak boards.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks really good. And the coloring is not streaky in any means. Like it's not, you know, like how the North American brands are is like they drop plastic pellets in and they smear them,
Yes.
essentially. They
Yep.
just get smeared into the cap.
Yep.
So it looks really great, but doesn't look realistic necessarily. this stuff, I don't know if like certainly it looks variegated. Like it looks like there's changes in color. I don't know if that's because of if they're injecting that or if it's just like how it looks. I don't know if that's intentional or not, because it's not much. It's a very subtle change. Anyways,
but
the
maybe
moral of
that's
the story
the
is
trick.
It looks very realistic.
Maybe that's the trick, right? Maybe what they're doing by not injecting pellets in to have it smeared around is really good.
Yeah.
So,
and they've got again, I need to spend some more time on their site and learning about it. But they've got what I think is kind of two looks or two series, or two whatever you want to call it. Lines, sure. And one is more realistic, like that oaky, walnutty look to it. Very like flat grain, looks great, looks super realistic. And the other one is like more of a heritage kind of vintage, like barnwood, old distressed wood look. That's super deep grooves and everything in it, but looks legit. Like looks like old lumber that's been painted. And it absolutely could fool you from a distance, even up close. The outdoor pavilion area, one of those like little homes that they had built out there, had a completely millboard, but in that rustic finish,
there's
like the rustic
stairs.
boards.
Yeah.
And it looked legit. It was like, this looks a lot like painted wood. Like you could fool somebody absolutely. So if you're looking for that old
looks
look.
like they have a few different lines of decking.
Sure. So what do we got here? Decking, millboard collections, enhanced screen, weathered oak, laster grip. That sounds like features. What do we got here? Enhanced screen. Okay, so that's still like 3 collections, it says. Like everybody's like, well, you guys don't do research before you start these? It's like, no, it's our opinions.
No, we don't.
Weathered oak and laster grip. Oh, laster grip is something that doesn't look familiar to me. I don't know if they had this there.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like that's just like an enhanced traction. It's got like lines of different types of embossing on it for traction solely.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's not the one that we've seen, but we have definitely looked at the weathered oak.
And that would be that old rustic
Yeah. And it's
barn
available
boardy
in
style
3
look.
colors.
Yeah.
And then
Looks
this
so good.
enhanced grain. And this is in 10 colors. So this is the one.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This enhanced grain looks sick.
So beautiful, beautiful stuff. The cool thing about this stuff too is that it's like, it's new, but it's not new.
It's not new.
We don't have to wonder if this stuff's gonna be around in 3 years from now. You know, when you see a new product come into these shows, sometimes you're like, okay, there's constantly something. You know what else we didn't talk about? I'm gonna put this back on here just as a reminder. Sorry, 1 second. Magnets.
Oh, yeah. Shit.
Sometimes you see a product that comes out and it's like new and you're like, well, that's really cool, but like it won't take off. I have no concerns about that with Millbury because they're established in the world. They've got all the money in the world and the expertise and the history and everything to make this happen. It's just like they will establish themselves in North America. There's no question.
Yeah. We just got to figure out a way to get it over here cost effectively. So for us, we've looked at Millboard. We've watched it, for 4 years. And all we're trying to do is figure out how to get it here at a reasonable price. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Because right now, like anything we have heard, and so you're going to try and get some quotes on this to see if we can maybe dial this in a little bit better. But everything we see is like that board's going to run at like 14, 15 a lineal foot retail.
Yeah.
And it looks fantastic. And would 2 or 3 people do that? Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard to inventory a product that is that expensive if you're not going to have a ton of traction on it. Pun not intended.
Yeah, I was going to say, well done on the pun.
But anyways, it can work well on front decks, and that's where a lot of the premium products do end up going. But if you're talking about doing a 400 square foot deck at $30 a square foot, it's like, holy shit, man.
Yep, she's premium, that's for sure.
So once we get, and we were talking to some of the distributors out of Ontario, and it's really funny, like in the US, a lot of the guys are like 1-step distribution, and up here we're talking like we always kind of want 2-step distribution because it's a little bit easier to infill, and it helps kind of keep the cost down because somebody else takes that big initial upfront hit. But right now it looks like the way Millboard's making its way into North America is it ends up quite a bit south, right? Like it's shipped into Georgia basically, and then moved across North America from there. As we have some distribution guys in Ontario that are saying like, listen, we can bring this down to St. Lawrence, land it in Ontario, and then truck it out, bring cans of it into Ontario. And so if that starts to happen, then maybe that 14 comes down a little bit because, of course, the biggest part of this board cost is the freight.
Yeah,
That's the biggest part.
That's the hardest part all the time when you're going to stand there with a customer and they're like, well, what makes this one 50% better than this one? It's like the answer can't be that it took 3 extra trains to get here.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
There's no value in that.
Yeah.
It's
It
like,
had to
why
come
is it worth
across on
more?
a
It's like,
boat.
well, there's a couple guys along the way that had to make margin on it too. And it took a couple extra boat rides and plane rides. Not plane rides, but so that's like, yeah, you want to try to eliminate as much of that as you can. But
So
regardless, it's here to stay. They're obviously making a big push. They're obviously spending some money. They had a big, huge, beautiful booth this year.
the other thing that was really cool that Millboard has is that bullnose, that flexible bullnose
Yeah.
piece. So you can do radius decks and there's no tools required.
Right.
Simply just
No
cut the
heating and
radius.
bending.
Yeah.
It was just a really wobbly. So the other thing is the decking is 1.25 inches thick, and then that bullnose piece that's flexible is what? Probably 1.5 inches wide or 2 inches wide.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit wider. I
It
think.
was like 2 inches wide. Yeah.
And so that it's sold. It's a different. It's not just the decking ripped down. We found out. We thought they were ripping that down
Yeah.
off a deck board, but it's not. It's intended for this exact purpose. So if you want to jump on the curved design trend, that I think is probably like on its back half of its life anyway. But if you do want to do it, it's easy now.
There's
you don't need to
still-
buy $8,000 heating blankets and.
Yeah, there's
burn
still lots of
$600
places
of the
that
boards.
curved decks are valuable.
Yep.
What-
I think the era of people forcing them into designs because they want to do it is
Yeah.
over. And it's like people are now doing it only if it makes sense to do it.
I was talking to one of the guys from Ontario, and I said the spot where I see a curved deck making the most sense all the time is around pools, and it's never ever the convexed curve. It's always the concave curve that I
Yeah.
think makes the most sense because then you can follow the inside of the pool, right?
Yeah.
That is where a curved deck makes sense
Sure.
to me.
Yep.
But
So anyways, that's
Millboard's pretty cool.
okay. So a couple more last things about that pro, and then a couple cons off the top of my head. Pro, pro and con. You face screw this because there's no clip system. There's no groove board, so you're not. It doesn't install like normal composites do. You are face screwing it. However, the face screws once they get below that rubber capping disappear because a rubber capping is elastic. You puncture through it with a number 7 screw, and then you pull your drill out, and there's rubber just goes whoop, and it
Closes
hides,
up.
like it's just gone.
Yep.
So that's really cool.
Till you go to take them out.
But it's different. So you go to take them out. Yeah. And that's always people that say the concern, but it's like build the deck properly. You shouldn't have to take them out. But regardless, you would literally need a stud finder to find the screws.
Yeah, it would be hard.
So that's a pro. The boards only come, was it 12
feet
141 inches long. And I don't know if that's just North America or if they only manufacture that long in other markets as well. So you don't have the traditional 12, 16, 20 that we're used to. You just have 12 feet long.
Yep.
But they say that the board is thermally stable as all hell
Okay.
so that you can butt the boards together and you don't end up with big, nasty gaps. And so that's what people are generally concerned about and why they want different sizes to begin with, is because composites generally don't butt
I
together.
still don't think
real
I
well.
would do that. I don't like that
I don't
look.
know. Yeah, neither do I.
I would way rather the picture frame or chop it up with some lines in it or
Right.
like.
But if you're looking at a wood deck, butt joints are normal.
I still
And
don't
on
like
that
the
stuff, you could be like
butt
tricked into
joints in
thinking
wood
that's
either.
wood deck. I don't disagree. Yep.
I think that's not.
But you could.
not
Now
the-
it's a design aesthetic, not
Yeah.
a like.
It's not the best way to
Not
build
functional.
anymore. So.
Yeah. So you don't have to, but that's a drawback. Drawback on the users and the homeowner side. Great thing for the guy stocking it.
Right.
Less SKUs to
One
stock.
SKU. Let's go.
1.25 thick, so pro and con. Could be a con if you're replacing existing decking and you've only left so much room
Yep.
under the siding or the threshold or whatever. What was the other con I was thinking of? I don't believe that it's got a fade and stain warranty.
Right. That's true.
Now, the distributor in Canada who was trying really hard to sell me this product didn't know that answer and then told me, he's like, yeah, I think it does. I think it's like a 15-year.
I
And
don't
I was
think
like,
that's true.
I don't think you know what you're selling.
Yeah.
But I didn't follow up to confirm that if something changed. It for sure didn't used to, and I still don't think it does.
I don't think it does either.
So is that bad? It's like, I don't know how much it's going to actually fade. And I feel like on realistic looking product like that it maybe doesn't matter as much. It's like that type of product doesn't need to have super vibrant color. You know what I mean? Like when Trex Transcend loses its luster, part of the appeal of that product is because it's like very vibrant colors. So if it starts to lose that, it's a problem. This stuff is like, it's almost a matte finish to begin with. So the color's a little bit like, not dull, but natural looking. So if it was to fade a little bit, I don't even think you'd notice.
Yep.
So minor drawback there. Availability right now is obviously a drawback.
That's
Price is obviously a drawback.
Yep.
Wow, we spent a lot. These guys now, what do they owe us?
Second
Pick a number.
longest podcast ever.
Like, let's just end this one and do the rest of these on another episode. See you later.
Send them the bill.
Yeah, right. No fastener for metal framing. So, okay, hold on here. We got some. What did I miss?
No, I think that was it.
On a rustic style deck, butt joints would be okay for that kind of design, I think. Yeah, I think it's
Because the board's got all
especially if
kinds
you're-
of texture to it, right?
right. And because that's what you would like, old decks would be built that way. So it would look probably more natural if it did have butt joints. Like if you took
Yeah.
that rustic, what do they call it again? Whatever it's called, like the weather, was it what? No,
Weathered oak. Weathered
Was that
oak.
the one?
Yep.
Weathered oak one. And if you put a spine board in that, honestly, that probably would look a little weird.
It might look worse. Yeah.
So you might be better off to butt joint that one.
Yep.
Widths. They have different widths too. I think the standard board is 6 inches wide, if I'm not mistaken.
6 and 7/8,
6 and 7/8, and when
and then
what?
4 and 7/8.
4 and 7/8, and then they have wide planks too. I think, right? Maybe just on the weathered oak ones. Anyway, enough about millboard. But pretty cool stuff. If you haven't seen it before, it's worth checking out. It's kind of neat. What was that other comment here? No fastener for metal framing.
Vertical. They would work really good on vertical surfaces, I think.
Yeah, like they use that weathered oak in a lot of like cladding applications there too. Well, they have cladding, specific cladding products too.
So that weathered oak is 7 and 7/8. It's like 8 inches wide.
Yeah, it's wider. So they had like, I think they had some posts there clad in it, like a
Yeah.
vertical post.
Yep.
That looked cool.
And so Scott had also mentioned earlier in the chat, he was concerned about the amount of dust that would lay into this embossing because it was so deep. And we did see that.
Absolutely did.
We saw that.
Outdoor showroom area. The gray one on that house, you could tell right away it looked very dirty.
Yep.
And it was in an area where there was no dirt. It was like carpet outside, and it was like, but it did get very dirty. The brown one hit it very well, but the gray one, you saw it for sure.
And
Maybe that helped it look more natural.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
That's
Next.
Millboard. Next,
up.
Fortress. Fortress is there again. Remember when they used to do decking? Yes, neither. No decking there, but they did have a couple new. It seems like every show we go to, they've got a couple new SKUs in their steel framing lineup, and so they did not disappoint again. They did have a couple new SKUs in their steel framing lineup again.
Yeah.
The Evolution steel framing,
Which is really good.
So not much to talk on, but a couple little pieces. They introduced what we were calling, I don't know what the official name is, but we were calling it flat blocking. Essentially,
Yeah, they're calling it like tile blocking.
yeah.
Right?
So what was it? Scott will correct us because he's in here, but like I think it was like roughly a 6-inch wide, thin piece of metal that would lay out over top of the joist, and then had a fold in it that was pre-notched to go over the joist, and then you fasten it to the side of the joist. So what they had told us it was for was now you can do tile applications on your deck. You install these flat block pieces, tile support system they're calling it. There you go. Tile support system 2 inches apart, and then that allows you to put porcelain tile on top of the deck with an adhesive.
Yes.
So cool. Like that opens
Super
up
cool.
the ability to do all sorts of cool stuff with that now. What we saw it as right away, we're like, oh, that'd be great for inlays and picture frames. And when you're running your boards diagonally and you got to zip them off, you need flat blocking.
Yeah.
Because it's like a nice flat piece of metal that will tuck underneath and not cause a big bump in the decking laying. So we thought that was the perfect use for it, was for the flat blocking.
Totally.
But also using it for tile. Because some of the other systems that are out there, like Outdoor and Embrico, all use like metal framing with a tile system.
Yes.
And this was one simple SKU they could release that allows them to also do tile.
Be able to do tile.
So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then they also, and Scott can also chime in here to tell me what this piece is called. But they also released like a railing block that would be like a code approved or engineered approved railing blocking. So one of the funny things when Fortress Evolutions was released is for a while, everybody's like, well, how do you attach surface mount railing to this stuff?
Right.
And everybody was trying to come up with their own solution, right?
Yeah.
Some guys were just bolt, like what Fortress is saying was you got to use a through bolt. You got to bolt through down to the bottom of the framing and put a nut in the backside. And everybody's like, that's shitty.
That's way too long. That's an
Nobody
8-inch
wants to do that.
bolt, right?
Yeah. So some guys are getting creative and they're like, well, I started tapping the steel and threading a bolt in. It's like, oh, okay. Does that work? Yeah, it works. Some guys started using like a self-tapping screw.
Yep.
And they were just drilling into the blocking. Some guys were feeding 2x6 wood, treated 2x6 into the tube steel.
Yep.
so that they could drill through the metal and then use a regular GRK into the wood below, and it would fasten that way too.
Certainly works.
Then Fortress released the toggle bolt for railing applications, and that was fine too. Now they've released this beefy, what was it, like 11 gauge steel channel or like steel angle that goes between the joists. I imagine they have it for 12-inch or 6-inch on centers. And it screws to the side of the two joists and then gives you a nice beefy 11 gauge flat surface to bolt your railing to. So, and they said that's all like approved, like, I don't know, code approved or engineer approved or whatever, like meant for this purpose. And now, they're not cowboying something.
Yeah, they're bolting it into the side of the joist, right?
Is it bolted?
It's being bolted in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a flange on there.
So super structural.
So good.
Yeah. Not just relying on the, 18 gauge tube steel, 16 gauge tube steel of the joists anymore. Now you got this beefy chunk of metal that will let anybody's mind rest.
Yeah. And it's fantastic.
And I think that's what they had here. Patio ERT Deck says, when will that be available? Man, I wish I was at IBS. Well, you don't have to be, because the Ultimate Deck Podcast is bringing you the best from IBS right to you. Meets
Save
commercial
yourself.
code, Scott says. So there you go. If I recall, that was the two things that
those were the two biggest things that they
were
had
showing
added.
off.
Yeah. They had some fencing there as well. They had some aluminum fencing that they were showing.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, it's fine. Lots of people are doing all these privacy panels and privacy fences and some version of that.
Corey wasted no time jumping in there and adding that too. Yeah, fence privacy panels. They were nice looking. We don't do a lot of that kind of fencing here, but I think they do down south. Yeah. Right? Like, they tell a lot of that stuff. It did look really nice. That stuff. Yeah. So, and super clean install, clean looking, like fastener free finish almost too.
Yeah.
On some of that. So it's good.
The track, like, you know, how the track would hide all the screws and stuff. I think there was some good engineering that went into that. So.
Yeah. So we saw Millboard. We saw Fortress. We didn't see Trex.
What's happening?
Where were they?
Why does this happen?
Everybody else, like all the other big brands, were there. I don't understand why they weren't. Like we were just talking about this before.
Crazy is that, like, their reps are there, right?
Were they?
Like, the reps go and they take people out and they take.
Well, I don't know if they were today. Wait. Yeah, absolutely they were, because Gord messaged me before IBS and was like, "Hey, do you guys have plans?" So, okay, so exactly what you were just suggesting was happening, but it's just we didn't make it work. So I was like, well, we're only there for 2 days. We're kind of busy. Like, we could maybe meet like late on Wednesday or Wednesday evening. He's like, it looks like it won't work out. So obviously they were there.
So I just don't understand why they don't put a booth in. Like, I get it. It's expensive and it's like, you probably don't get a whole lot out of it. You know, like, you probably don't get a lot of business coming out of that show, especially if you're Trex. Like, you
know how you most assuredly guarantee you don't get business out of that show?
I know how you don't get more. Yeah.
Like,
you for sure don't convert people.
I don't know. It just seems like a strange omission to me. They used to use that show to launch products. Like, you don't have to do what they did years ago when it was like, when them and TimberTech had a pissing match and they were like race to the sky on the biggest and baddest ass booth. It was pretty wild, like what they used to do. Final guy says, too bad they didn't show that butt joint clip. Yeah, well,
it's like,
so there's that.
Yeah. They spend the entire year in R&D, and what they come out with is a clip that is not relevant to the industry. It's like anybody who's actually building decks that are any quality deck builder is not butting deck boards together anymore. That's not happening.
They shouldn't be, but Trex the last few years seems to be very homeowner focused. They're really trying to draw business in by appealing to the homeowners, and homeowners absolutely are. But here's the other thing too. I don't like, it's a funny little product, but it's way better than sistering two joists together, which is what they required before. So you want to frame up your deck, and like, you have to think that far ahead for a homeowner DIY project. You have to think about where your butt joint's going to be so you can double joists there.
Yeah, 8 feet in and 12 feet in.
Like, the clip beats that for sure. But
you can't.
I get you.
It's like, with the Trex board, you can't do a butt joint with the Trex board because they ski tip so bad.
Contractors aren't going to be lining up to buy buckets of the butt joint clip. No. That's for sure. But anyways, like, I don't know. I feel like you should be there. I feel like it's the biggest show of the year. I feel like there's an expectation that you're going to be there. I understand they weren't launching anything new. Like, they do have excuse me, they do have a signature line that not a lot of people would have seen yet.
Certainly.
It's been available in the States for a little bit. It's new in Canada, but certainly not everybody has seen it because its distribution was pretty low until, like, it's getting out there now.
Yeah.
But, so I don't know. It's strange that they're not there. Everybody else
and
was
that's supposed to be like kind of their new flagship board. So you would think that you would want to show that increased traction, better coloring,
Right.
like
because what you're like also kind of a bad play because Millboard was there and making a lot of noise
yeah,
and TimberTech was there.
yep,
Like everybody else was there. It's like their biggest competitors were there, and like Millboard, I can promise you. The boardroom at Trex has had discussions about Millboard's presence in this
Yeah.
market now, and so
For
for them
sure
to be
they
there
have.
and not. But anyway,
And
like
the other thing that you have to be conscious of is like, so we talk about this in our store. It's like you shouldn't put together a marketing plan based on what your competitors are doing. But like an omission of a space like that, it's noticeable.
Yeah.
And it's even more noticeable because it's like 4 shows in a row now.
yeah, it seems to be just something they're not planning on doing.
They're just
anymore
like-
maybe for a while, maybe forever. I don't know. But they've
Who
obviously
knows?
found that it's not worth their investment. So I guess it's their money to spend.
Yeah.
It just seems strange to me.
It's too bad that they couldn't do like a 10 by 20 and like just be there, just be present.
Eric says at least Trex was at Deck Expo. They were at Deck Expo. Actually, I forgot that. We just said they haven't been to a bunch in a row, and I was thinking not Deck Expo either, but they were at last Deck Expo. They had a booth there. But anyway, strange admission, but it is what it is. On to Moisture Shield. Moisture Shield did have somewhat a new product. They actually debuted it at Deck Expo, but they debuted the final version of it at IBS, and that is their PVC decking. And I don't remember what it's called. I should have looked that up before. You'll look it up now.
I'll look it up for you.
But Moisture Shield, after years and years of being a wood plastic composite deck board, and for a number of years only wood plastic, not even capped. Then they've capped it through the years. They've capped. Now they're releasing and I believe it's got bamboo in it. Is that right? It's got some sort of filler in it, but it's a PVC deck board now. And so they showed it at Expo. I believe it was 2 colors at that time. Fairly similar looking to the Meridian line. As far as aesthetic goes, but it's a PVC board that can span 24 inches on center. So that's pretty remarkable. Should you or would you? I don't know that, but where that matters is on docks, right? You often got 4-foot wide docks that have a single bearing joist down the middle. So a 2-foot on center application is great for that. And you don't do that with PVC. You don't do 24 inches on center with PVC.
No,
typically
you do not.
You don't even like to do 16s typically. So that for them to come out with a board that can do 24s, and I believe that that's made possible because of this whole fiberglass sheet layer in it that we said that companies are starting to do.
Right.
They've done it on
The
this
next core.
Yeah. So interesting product from them. I did notice that what am I trying to say? The variegation, the streaking in the board looked to be like there was more variegation in it this time around than there was at Deck Expo. And they said, yep, we did increase that to give it a bit more character for the final version of the board. And so it was there and looked good. If you didn't see it, they weren't at their own booth. They were part of the Old Castle booth that was showing off all of Old Castle's brands. And they had a great booth. That was a great little spot.
Yeah.
Really attractive. I was taking inspiration out of their booth. It was like, this is really nicely laid out.
Yeah, because they did
how
a
they
good job
categorize
of
everything.
showing their, like, what do they got, 3 lines? 3 companies, basically, 3 totally different
more than
companies.
that. Well, they got like Bellegarde and Barrette and Sacrete and
Oh, yeah.
Moisture Shield and whatever their pool textures are called and their wall material.
Oh,
They've probably got about like 5 or 6 product categories and brands that they operate in.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
And so, it was done well, where they had, everybody kind of lined up, and you could kind of walk through the booth and then be in the Bellegarde section of the booth and then be in the Moisture Shield section of the booth. And so they did a great job of that.
Yeah. Millboard Troy has joined. He joined a little late. The first 20 minutes of this conversation was about his stuff, and he shows up when it's all over. So did you find out, is there bamboo in that?
It doesn't.
I may not be right
They
on that.
certainly don't mention that. They talk about a fiberglass reinforcement.
Like there's bamboo in the Everlast product.
Yeah.
But so maybe there's not. Maybe it's just fiberglass, no bamboo. Regardless. Then we didn't talk to anybody about this there because we weren't even sure if they were actually showing it or if it was just like somebody else's display. But Ultralux had aluminum framing there.
Just on the end of their one, like just on the end of the booth. Nobody was talking about it. There was no branding on it. There was no.
It was just like a tiny little like 3x3 display, like knee high. But I think that their booth actually was made out of it. Their booth had a second story with stairs that went up to it, and I think that booth is made out of it. Ultralux, if you're not familiar, is a railing company that they sell the whole system. They sell you a giant hydraulic press.
They sell you a machine. Is what
they sell you a machine, and then the parts to put in the machine in, and they sell you essentially like top and bottom rails and pickets, and you put it all together, and you let this giant hydraulic machine
compress it,
press it all together to make a panel.
Yeah. So
that's what they've been for years and years. But this year we walked by and was like, is that framing? They've got framing. We kind of looked at it and there was no signage about it. It was just a tiny portion of their booth. We're like, well, I don't know. I can't tell if that's their own framing or if it's TimberTech's framing that they're just like showing something with. We didn't really know, but we didn't talk to anybody about it. Then afterwards we went and looked at their website here, like before this podcast, and we're like, oh, they actually promote aluminum framing now.
Yeah.
So I guess it was theirs. Can't tell you much about it because we didn't ask her questions there and we didn't look up too much about it.
But that will be like that. That's going to be good.
Oh,
there you go.
Did I know this? Ultralux is owned by AZEK. It's probably the TimberTech framing. Boy, that's kind of ringing a bell now. Maybe I forgot that I knew that. So if it's owned by AZEK now, then it absolutely was just TimberTech's framing.
Like it certainly looked like.
Right. All right. We don't usually edit this podcast, but I'm going to rewind this and cut this section right.
Even you had said that when you looked at it. You were like, man,
it looks like TimberTech's
This
framing.
looks like TimberTech's framing.
And we actually thought it was until we looked up for the podcast and they said aluminum framing on their website. We're like, oh, I guess they did launch their own. So strange. Okay. Well, cross that out. Inlight.
They
was there.
They were there.
You know who wasn't there? Just
Bold Pros.
Yeah.
Bold
Pros
Pros
wasn't there. So Inlight resurfaces. So Inlight had a small corner of Regal Ideas' booth, I guess. So boy, oh boy. Like for anybody that's
10 by 20?
They had a
10 by 10.
Like they had a third of their booth or something, a quarter of Regal's booth. So the good people at Regal offered to share with Inlight because of, well, good people work with good people, I guess. But I'm guessing that because of all the shit that went down with Inlight and Bold Pros, I'm guessing that maybe Inlight didn't have their ducks in order to have their own booth, and so they missed out or they were late to the party or something like that. So Regal was like, well, you can park at our booth. So that was nice of them. But it was nice to see a presence from Inlight because they weren't at Deck Expo.
Yeah.
And, you know, they weren't at some of the landscape shows like on Landscape Ontario Congress show.
Like I think they were
because of the.
Yeah, I think some of the guys
maybe.
were there at Congress, but they turned out they didn't have a booth to work. So that was when, from what I understand, that was when the Inlight Regal collab for IBS came to be during Congress. So
yeah, so Alex is in here. He's been waiting patiently for us to get to this point. It says next time we'll have an Inlight 2.0 booth. Whatever that means. Sounds exciting. Loop us in. And Baxter says, big fan of Regal. It's always my go-to. Yeah, so it was nice to see Inlight because we haven't heard anything from Inlight. We, personally, haven't heard anything from Inlight since the shit show. Like, what else do you call what happened there with
it's really all it is, man.
Inlight and Bold Pros? So there's a giant story behind us that we don't need to get into the details, but essentially the North American distributor of Inlight
decided to cut ties.
Like pulled a stunt in the middle of the night and switched to manufacturing their own products and launched it all of a sudden one day and just like, Bold Pros is here, Inlight's gone, and everybody's like, what is going on here? And Inlight, to my understanding, was not really made aware of this either. So it all just kind of like blew up, and for months people have been questioning like, what the hell is going on here?
Because people didn't know if Inlight had changed its name or if it was like Inlight North America had changed its name, or like people just didn't know.
Just didn't know.
Because there was
little information.
There was very little information about it.
No lead up. It's like, you know what? Yeah. Anyway, so regardless, we've heard from Bold Pros quite a bit. We're an Inlight stocking dealer, which is why I say we haven't heard from them. But it's like also this happened very suddenly, and they've got a lot of people to contact, and they've got a lot of work to do to like stay in the game in North America. So they've been busy.
Yeah, and I think Jurgen was telling me they hired something like 11 or 12 people in the last like 3 weeks.
Right.
So they're staffing up. They will end up getting distribution back into North America. The product is as good as it ever was, if not better. And like, let's be honest, they're going to have a shitload of motivation now.
Yeah.
I would have to think that they are probably going to be a very solid force over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So it was good to see them there. It was good for us to finally talk to some folks there and like pretty high ups there that were at the show. They weren't messing around. So it's good to like talk to somebody and see like, where do we go from here? And it turns out where we go from here is Alex, and he's in here. So Jurgen's like, Alex is going to send you an email. We'll get you sorted out. So that was good. Cody is in here. She said, I didn't even understand until Kevin explained it to me this week. Same as Scott. So there was a lot of information that was dispelled. I've heard I initially pieced a lot of things together myself just based on like, I think I've figured out what's going on here.
All your years of crime TV. Hey.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then you hear from other people who have like heard things and figured things out. And then of course the show is like more of the story came out. And now I think we've all got a pretty complete picture of what's going on here. But anyways, Corey says, I don't know if I understand it yet. And I've had it explained to me at least twice. So that's good. Not much to say. They didn't have much product there. It was clearly kind of like they managed to squeeze in their last minute, and so they weren't showing a whole lot. But it was just good to have the reassurance that they're around.
I think the purpose of them being at that show is they had to show up and shake hands, and be like, "We're coming
for sure." This is gonna piss Corey off. Everlast was there, so
I don't know why he'd be mad.
I won't.
He doesn't make any of the decisions for either of those companies.
I won't. We don't need to belabor this too much, but Everlast made an appearance again. They were first at Deck Expo with their new products. They were there again. There was nothing new from Deck Expo to IBS, but certainly not like obviously a lot more people go to IBS than Deck Expo, so the majority of the audience there wouldn't have seen their stuff before. But they're also breaking into the North American market, much like Millboard, and so they're more traditional. They are the bamboo infused composites and PVCs.
Yep.
3 lines are launching in North America: the budget line, the higher end composite line, and then the high end photo print PVC line.
Yep.
Really nice looking stuff. Not much more to say about it. Bunch of great people. It was essentially Fibron 2.0. Like that, we went for dinner with them the one night, and then we met up with more of them the one night. So we went for dinner with three of them?
4 of them.
There was
Eric, Bryce, Sean, and Mike.
Right. Okay. So 4 of them. And then we met up later with 2 or 3 more guys that all worked with Everlast.
Yeah.
And as we're sitting there, the one guy was like, yeah, so like all of these guys are from Fibron except for that one guy.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So they basically headhunted the whole Fibron team.
Yeah.
Regardless, they're not going anywhere. Nice products. Have a look. That's all there's to say about that.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways they're going to address some of again, they had similar problems. They were manufacturing offshore and then trying to get it into North America. There's a bunch of struggles with that. There's like, you have some tariff issues, you have some freight issues, right? And so now they're putting together manufacturing in Dallas, and as that takes off or takes hold or gets stronger, no doubt that board will become even more competitive.
Right.
So, especially for us.
Scott says, I love that they were there on their own. He's got a better attitude than this about Corey. than Corey does. I just keep bugging Corey because, like, I'm sure there's no actual... like Corey was just responsible for trying to sell that board to us when it was under Fortress, and we didn't. Not because he wasn't doing a good job, just because we just didn't need it at that time. Anyways, he also says, did they have the aluminum core composite capped product? Like, why does that sound vaguely familiar? But no, I don't think I saw anything new with their booth.
Not that I saw.
Did they say something about an aluminum core?
But I don't think we were looking around too much.
Wait, for decking or for other applications? Because at Deck Expo they had, I think it was an aluminum capped, like 2x8 or 2x10. They're using for like an aerial structure of some sort.
Oh,
and that was a thing at that time.
For some of their
it wasn't
pergolas.
For decking, I don't think. So maybe that's what he's referring to, or maybe I'm just not in the mix. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah, for pergolas. That's what Scott's saying.
For pergolas, yeah. So they had some sort of structure above their booth. It must have been that. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. But they absolutely had it at Deck Expo, so presumably they would have it there too. Yeah. So that's it. Here's Bold Pros Alex. Okay, we're out. You guys have it. They're both named Alex too. Come on. Can't write this stuff. I think they're marketing it as a pergola cladding thing. Yes. So yes, they did, I think, have that there. We didn't talk to them much about it because we already know we spent a lot of time with them at Expo and at WRLA. So we didn't have anything more to learn from them there. But yeah, it was there. This wasn't even on our list of Alex on Alex crime. This wasn't even on our list to talk about because I just remembered last minute
so funny
that it was still there. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Where was this?
3 years ago.
Was it in Vegas? Have you ever been to an IBS that wasn't in Vegas?
Yeah.
Orlando?
No. Nope. I've
all
only
of
done
the ones you've been to. So it must have been in
Vegas.
Vegas then a few years ago. A few
but
years
you
ago.
Just see, like, I feel like I saw it at Deck Expo. Like, I feel like I saw this in Nashville.
I don't think so, because the only time I think I saw it, I specifically remember it being right around the corner from the Fortress booth years ago. And I believe it was Scott, actually. Was it Scott? Somebody at Fortress that was like, have you seen this? Come over here. And they took me to it and were like, check this out. Anyway, well, you hinted enough. What is it even called? Magna board? Magnet something?
I think it's Magna board.
Okay, so if I recall, I remember more information from years ago when it was there than I do from this show, but because I thought they would be gone by now, to be quite frank. I believe they were a company out of Calgary. And so what they do is
Magna board.
Magna board?
Mm-hmm.
So the system works for both interior trim work, like MDF baseboards essentially, and it can also work for decking. And somebody's gonna fill me in on this here. When Scott says that, I think it was me. It was wild. So they were still there, which blew my mind. I thought for sure that would not go anywhere, but I'm guessing it's the baseboard business that keeps them in business because it makes a lot more sense for that use. But essentially what it is do you route the magnet back into the back of the board or just steel?
No,
regardless, you have to channel out the back of your deck board.
Like, it certainly looks like
The magnets
magnets are
on the joist?
the magnets are fastened to the wall or the joist,
Okay.
and then the track is put in the board or the baseboard.
Right. So you've got to route out a channel in the back of your deck board that's like 4 inches wide. Like, it's a big channel. It's not like you run a little quarter horse router through the back of it. This is a big channel. You carve into the back of the board and you slide. Is that what you do? You slide a steel channel into it?
Yeah.
Steel piece into it?
It's like a U channel.
And then you put these magnets on your joists, and the magnets, like, they just push on. They're like housed in a plastic thing with teeth that you push onto the joist and they won't come back out because of teeth. And then your board will just magnet to the deck. Yep. You heard that right.
This works really good
So,
in baseboard situations,
right.
where
for
there's
baseboards,
no
it makes
wind,
sense. Baseboards makes a bit of sense.
no uplift.
For those people, when you show them millboard and they're like, well, how do you get the board back off afterwards? Be like, oh, is that your primary concern? Then do I have a deal for you?
Yeah.
Like, how about magnets? You can pop the board off whenever you
Your
want.
objection is you won't be able to pull it off easy enough. Have I got a deal for you?
Oh, man. Eric says you've promoted it so often on this podcast, they must have relaunched.
Right?
Yeah. You're welcome. So, like, just mind-blowing technology. The fact that product exists, it is mind-blowing.
The thing that
I think that they make the board. They don't make their own boards, but they will channel the boards for you and sell them pre-channeled, I think. I remember back then, because we didn't talk to anybody here this year. We just looked at it again. We're like, holy shit,
they're still alive.
this is still around.
Right. That's like the 98-year-old that keeps going past to get groceries. You're like she's still there.
What did you find out? Did you
No, I
learn
shut it
anything
down.
while you're on
No,
there?
I
Are
just,
they from Calgary?
Yeah. The guy who owns it is from, started it. He's from Calgary.
Wild.
They've been doing this for 15 years.
No.
Yep. 15 years ago. So it started with baseboards. So
Starts and ends with baseboards.
where it all
It's not a
falls,
legit decking product.
it's not a decking product. It falls apart for me on the decking because if you think about how much goddamn material would be in somebody's yard after you routed that out. Man, you'd go through, like you'd have a vacuum full of shavings every hour.
So why don't they, here you go, Magnaboard, if they, like maybe they don't know any more about this podcast than we know about them, but if this gets back to them, why don't they go to like Everlast with their Infinity line that has scalping on the back that has channels that something could be held in? You know what I mean? Like a Fibron Good Life, you can't.
Yep.
There's nothing to hold anything into their scallop.
Yeah.
Whereas because Infinity's is like an I-beam shape, you technically could slide like a tube into the middle of it. Why don't they use that decking that doesn't require any work and just slide a tube into it and use that to, like, why am I even going down? Or they just stop. Just focus on the baseboards.
Yeah. Or you could use, like you could cut a small U channels to pound into the back of Trex boards because those are they're pretty squared off channels that are in the back of the Trex Naturals line.
Yeah.
And
or why can't they?
I think if I was doing it, I think I'd be putting. Yeah, no, that's how they do that.
Why don't you just screw like a steel strip to the back of a solid deck board?
I don't know.
Why do we have to channel anything out? Scott says, I can see interior use all day, but for deck boards, seems sketchy and wasteful.
Totally. And not safe. And like moves around. It's not.
It for sure is the product that has generated the most questions in my mind.
Yeah.
I didn't spend much time at the booth. I don't know. That one is interesting.
Magnets. They're still going.
Yeah.
Despite all of your negative criticisms, still going.
Was that another pun?
No? Oh, I think so. Oh, yeah. It's a negative charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was IBS in a nutshell. We're going to seal this thing up here. So if anybody on the Instagram live, geez, we're into double digits people watching this thing.
Sunday afternoons.
If anybody was there that saw something interesting that we didn't remember, that you want us to chat about, act fast before we close this thing up and we'll chat about it. But overall impression of IBS, I felt like this, for us personally, for our store, I felt like it was arguably one of the most productive ones we've been to. And it was not because we found a bunch of new products to bring home. We did go and look at quite a bit of new kitchens out there. HDPE kitchens. Seems like there's a lot of manufacturers of that shit now. You know, like there used to be Nature Cast.
Yeah.
That was like a foamed PVC cabinet or something like that.
Yep.
And there was like there was always been stainless steel ones.
Yep.
But it seems like the HDPE market for outdoor kitchen cabinetry is really blown up. Like we probably saw like no less than a half a dozen companies doing that exact thing. And
there's a company out of Florida that's doing flat packs on those now, which I think will be really good.
Yeah, that was
like
interesting.
Always it's the freight that kills everything.
Yeah.
And so if you can find a way to freight it properly.
Still bloody expensive no matter what. Like those outdoor kitchen cabinets, boy, those are like
cabinets cost a lot
expensive.
Of money. That's what it is, man.
Yeah. Forefront Homes Alberta says, what do you guys think of the millboard decking? You have to listen back to this because the whole 20 minutes of the start of this podcast was exactly that. You'll learn everything we thought about it. It's great. A couple small caveats. Listen back to the podcast.
Yeah. In a nutshell, we love it.
What else? Where was I going with that before? The layout of the show. Really love the layout of the show because you could get through it in not much more than it takes you to get through Deck Expo. Like when they just keep everything in that one spot, that one hall, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think as a retailer or as a homeowner or a trades person, I would have to think that the layout of the show is better for everybody that's walking the show.
Yeah.
We did hear from a doer that they didn't love the layout because there was not accidental visitors. And I could see that.
That they weren't seeing as many designers and architects through that space.
Yeah, because designers and architects aren't coming to the outdoor space, right. Outdoor living area space.
Yeah, so they aren't stumbling upon that by accident.
Which then we talked that's maybe a knock against the architects and designers because that's man, there's a lot of people that
starting to feel like they're ignoring that they don't pay enough attention to the outside of the house?
I do believe that, and it also happens when I think about home builders. So I was thinking about this morning, actually. And so we have this local home builder who they just don't put decks on the house. They do these custom houses. Almost every house they build is over $1 million, and they don't put decks on them. They just recommend people.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you guys do decks? And they're like, no. And then what do you do for the landscaping? And they're like, nah, we just recommend these guys.
Yeah.
And
It
so
does.
I think that's a miss on their part, because the people that are building these houses, like they're hiring a home builder, paying them $1 million or more to build this house for them. And then the house is done, and then they have to go find someone else to build their deck and find someone else to do their backyard, because they're not the customer that now is going to build their own deck.
Well, and
Typically.
the thing is too, there is a trend towards, we talked about this at the show, and I can't remember with who, probably a number of people. There's this trend towards like trying to blend the interior design aesthetic with
Right.
the outdoor. And it's like, wouldn't you want to have your tile or your hardwood? I was talking to, actually at the Everlast booth, I think. And it was one of the guys there was like, don't you think that this wide plank is going to be really great, because that's what's on trend inside the house. So it's like carrying it outside, and people are going to want the wide plank. And so like there is absolutely people that are starting to try to like blend the divide between inside and outside. So then shouldn't the people that are designing the inside of the house also have an understanding of the available products and aesthetic that's possible on the outside too, and have that same person working on it for your best result? Like, to me, it makes sense.
Yeah, and they're like, it seems like they go to the wall of the house. So they're even working on the idea of different interior doors that have super low thresholds, so that you can just walk in and out of the house with zero to no transition.
Yep. So Scott says
get
South Hall Upper was the hardest to find. So that may have been a contributing factor. That's where the outdoor living space was.
Yes.
And so you might have got to South Hall and spent your whole, like a bunch of time on the main floor and never even realized that there was a second floor up above.
Sure. That's fair.
Vinyl Guy says he agrees with the builders. They all concentrate on, and designers presumably all concentrate on kitchen and bath. So maybe that's where they were. There was 2 giant kitchen and bath halls. They might spend all their time over there.
It's certainly a sexier area too, right? Like when people start talking about it, it's like it's cooler to see like new cabinetry and new hardware and like all that stuff. But
yeah. And then the Fortress guys are commenting that like it doesn't make any sense, because most people would want to work that into their mortgage. Like just do their whole house. They want to finance it together, and like not like finance 3/4 of it and then have a bunch of money to finance differently for the outside portion. It's just like put it all into one.
right. And when you sell your house, the whole backyard goes with the house.
Yeah.
So just like finance in the build, like the build of your backyard as well. All your landscaping and all your trees and your fence and your, like, it's all part of it. And when you sell the house, that goes with the house.
Yeah.
Nobody ever just, like, if it's an above ground pool, you could take it with you, or a hot tub, you could take it with you, but typically you don't. You just leave it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And so like we have some work to do this year with some home builders around here, because it's like, it's so, like, it makes so much sense to me that I can't understand why it's not happening. I don't know why it's not part of the sales process.
Kevin from NFDI says, if Scott didn't walk us up to the Fortress booth, I would have not have thought to go up there. Didn't make it that far in previous years. So maybe that's the problem. Because I know, like, I talked to Regal Ideas too, and they were like, this is great, having all the outdoor living stuff in one spot. They really liked it. Outdoor didn't as much. But maybe the issue is like, maybe the idea of keeping them grouped together is great. It shouldn't be on the second floor of that South Hall. Should, if it was more like in one of the other buildings, maybe it would be better. How do we lobby the NAHB to move the outdoor living to a more prominent space?
To Central Hall.
Right? Put the kitchen and bath. Why don't they put the kitchen and bath in that one hall that has 2 floors? It was weird that the main floor was kitchen and bath, and then the other kitchen and bath was in a completely different hall. Why not put that all in the building that has 2 floors?
Do you think there's enough square footage there?
Maybe not. I'm guessing that's probably the reason why they didn't. But like, that would be convenient to do it that way,
Then just up the price a little bit on the booths and get the ones like,
right?
put a little bit of demand on there.
Yeah, skim some off the top. But anyways, I thought the overall general, the doing that though, grouping it was great. Maybe we can argue for a different location somehow.
There you go. Now you got Chris Murray's in here. Now you got a kitchen guy.
Most interior designers don't spec exterior finishes. Yeah,
Right. Why?
exactly. Can they? We'd like to see them try.
There's
Kevin
just
says,
like,
how about move the outdoor living to the outdoors? There's that option too.
there was supposed to be an outdoor living part there.
Well, there was, but it was more just like on it was like
was
an
siding.
exteriors, yeah,
Right?
and tiny homes,
And it was
displays.
tiny homes. Like, I like the idea of having it inside because, let's be honest, the weather can be all over the place in Vegas at this time of year. And last year it was quite cool when we were there.
Yeah, and my
This year is quite warm.
wind.
Could you imagine if it happened to be like the wind was supposed to be coming the day after we left, but like, could you imagine if you got stuck in 40-mile-an-hour wind?
Yeah, and I
And
guess
the
that's maybe
sun,
why they put the
and you got-
homes out there because you can go inside.
All your vendors are stuck outside trying to talk to people, and it's just like windy and hot, and
yeah.
like, man, they'd be miserable.
I personally wouldn't want to have to spend my whole day outside because that's where all my stuff
Yeah.
is. But
Yeah.
but it like you could see how it would make sense. But regardless, so IBS won for the Times. Next year it's back in Vegas. One more year.
one more
then
year in
Orlando
Vegas.
for a year. Then back to Vegas.
For a
Deck
couple.
Expo this year is in
Dallas.
Dallas this year.
2 years in Dallas.
2
And
years
then-
in Dallas.
Yeah, and then
I don't know. Back
New
to
Orleans.
Vegas probably. Oh yeah, that's right. New Orleans in 2026. So they've gotten off schedule. Well, maybe it's because it's the pool spot patio. They used to not announce where Deck Expo would be until that was like part of the opening ceremony. It was like, next year we're going to be in Louisville.
Yeah.
And now they have it planned 3 years out.
Yeah.
But maybe that's part of the pool spot patio.
Yeah.
That's it. Am I right? Or what? What else do you have to say?
I'm gonna have to reach out to Chris, get a hold of his beautiful girlfriend, and find out why the designers aren't designing outside spaces. We should actually have Chrissy on here and chat with her about that.
Maybe. Yeah, we could. Maybe it's just like,
just be
well,
like,
that's how it's always been done. One
right.
of those things.
I hate
because
that answer. That's the stupidest answer.
you know what? 10 or 15 years ago, nobody cared about the outdoor space. A deck was like you just banged up a pressure treated deck and it was like, didn't mean much.
Yep.
I'm probably even young on that. Maybe like 15, 20 years ago, nobody cared. But certainly when the HGTV and all, the DIY network started focusing on outdoor living spaces, there is a shitload of money being spent in the outdoor living.
Like some
So
of that stuff
we
that
shouldn't
Deck
neglect
South is doing, man. Like those are like some backyards he's doing are worth more than houses.
They're
Like,
million
he's
dollar
doing-
backyards.
He's doing $1 million backyards, and you can't tell me that a designer doesn't want to be involved in that. They're doing kitchens and flooring and roofs and like. This isn't just landscape architect anymore. It's not somebody putting shrubs in the ground and some pavers down.
I know that we did a design for a lady in California last year, and she was working with her, I think it was her interior designer, to do the outside as well because she wanted it to all, she was very, very insistent on it all matching.
Yeah.
Like the number one thing for her when she was shopping for a deck board was the color because it had to match perfectly her or complement perfectly her interior flooring that
Right.
I was going to meet. And it was like, that was very, very important to her.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, she was working with the same designer to ensure that
She
vision
can't
all
be
came
the only
together.
person.
Right? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for us today. I think we'll be back next week, I guess. Peace out.
Hey, thank you for listening to the Ultimate Deck Podcast. Now you know what we're about. Check the site, come and shop. UltimateDeckShop.com. Hit us right away for sponsorships or tell us if you want to collaborate. Let's go. Check us out on any social networks. Thank you for listening.